If you've been scrolling through endless spec sheets, watching YouTubers compare a handful of high-end laptops, and you're still left wondering which machine actually makes sense for the kind of gaming you do, you're not alone. The market is flooded with ultra-thin workstations and gaming beasts that both claim to be the best of both worlds, and it's easy to feel stuck between performance and portability. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In this review, I'm going to walk through the HP Flagship touchscreen business laptop, test how it behaves when you push it hard with modern games, and decide whether it deserves a spot on your desk or if you're better off putting your money toward a desktop or a more dedicated gaming notebook. First off, let's set the scene. You're a professional who spends the day in spreadsheets, video calls, and maybe a bit of 3D modeling, but you also want to unwind with the occasional AAA title. Think Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring, or the latest Battlefield. You need a machine that can handle a 15-inch display, a responsive touch interface for presentations, and enough RAM to keep dozens of browser tabs open while you game. At the same time, you don't want a laptop that turns your coffee table into a radiator after an hour of play. That's the sweet spot this HP model claims to hit. The core of the machine is the Intel Core i7-1355U, a 10-core chip that sits in the U power efficiency class. In everyday tasks, email, Excel, and even light video editing, it feels snappy. When I launched a couple of recent titles at 1080p with medium settings, the processor kept up with the GPU without choking, but the real test is sustained load. After about 30 minutes of continuous gaming, the laptop's temperature rose to the low 90 SF on the chassis. That's noticeable, but not unbearable. The fan kicked in with a low-to-moderate whine that you can hear in a quiet room, but it never became an ear-splitting roar. If you're used to the aggressive fan curves of a full-blown gaming laptop, this is actually a pleasant surprise, though you'll still want to keep a small desk fan nearby for marathon sessions. Speaking of the GPU, the HP uses Intel Iris Xe integrated graphics rather than a dedicated NVIDIA or AMD chip. On paper that sounds like a compromise, and it is. If you push the graphics settings to ultra, you'll see frame rates dip below 30 FPS in the most demanding titles. However, for games that are well optimized or for indie titles, the Iris Xe holds its own at 60 FPS on 1080p. I ran a session of Valorant and Minecraft with shaders, and both stayed solidly above 60, with virtually no input lag. The takeaway? This laptop is a competent casual gamer, but it's not built to replace a high-end desktop GPU for competitive esports or next-gen AAA at max settings. Now let's talk about the display. The 15.6-inch Full HD IPS touchscreen is bright enough for a sunny office, and the touch layer works well for sketching or navigating PowerPoint during meetings. The color accuracy is decent out of the box. I didn't have to spend time calibrating for the first few weeks of use. For gaming, the touch input is disabled, but the 60 Hz refresh rate is standard, and the IPS panel provides wide viewing angles, which matters if you're streaming to a friend on the couch or showing your work to a colleague across the table. The only downside is the lack of a higher refresh rate. Serious competitive gamers will miss that extra smoothness. Keyboard feel is another practical factor that often gets glossed over. HP kept the classic island-style keys with a modest travel distance and a faint tactile bump. I typed for an hour straight while writing code, and the keys didn't feel mushy. In gaming, the key actuation is quick enough for most titles, but you won't get that clicky feedback you find on gaming-oriented keyboards. The backlighting is single color and dimmable, which is fine for low-light sessions but not customizable for aesthetic preferences. Battery life is where the trade-off becomes clear. The 56Wh cell gives you roughly 5 to 6 hours of mixed usage email, web browsing, and a couple of hours of light gaming. Once you crank up a demanding game, the battery drops to about an hour before the charger is needed. This isn't a surprise for a laptop with a 10-core CPU and an integrated GPU that still draws a fair amount of power, but it's something to keep in mind if you plan to game away from an outlet. Storage and memory are where the HP truly shines for a professional. With 32 GB of DDR5 RAM and a 1TB NVMe SSD, you have more than enough headroom for multitasking, large project files, and quick game load times. In my tests, loading a large open-world map took under 10 seconds, which feels comparable to many dedicated gaming laptops that often come with 16 GB of RAM and a 512 GB drive. The SSD's speed also means the OS boots in under 30 seconds, and software updates complete without a hitch. Port selection is